It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when my life took a turn I never saw coming. I was sitting at my desk, the faint hum of my computer mingling with the distant sounds of students chatting outside. I had just finished grading papers when my phone buzzed, the vibration feeling oddly sinister. I glanced down and saw an anonymous message, the type you instinctively know is going to change everything. Curiosity piqued, I opened it, and what I found sent a chill down my spine. Attached was an audio file labeled, April, and my heart raced as I hit play. The voice I recognized all too well was my wife, April, laughing and speaking intimately with a man I'd never met. My stomach twisted as I listened to them discuss their special connection and their plans to meet later that week. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. April was cheating on me. I sat there in stunned silence, my mind racing with disbelief. Just a week ago, we had shared a romantic dinner where she laughed at my jokes and kissed me with a passion I thought was genuine. How could she be so two-faced? Memories of our happiest moments flashed before my eyes, tainted now by this betrayal. I felt sick. As I replayed the recording, every laugh and whispered word pierced my heart like daggers. It was a cruel joke, an intimate betrayal disguised as a loving marriage. I remembered the late nights she'd claimed were for studying, the sudden distance that had crept into our relationship over the past few months, the random messages on her phone she quickly dismissed when I asked about them. The pieces began to fit together, and I was left with a sickening sense of clarity. I had to confront her. I had to know the truth. But first, I needed to gather my thoughts and my evidence. I couldn't just storm in with accusations without knowing for sure. My heart pounded in my chest, a cacophony of anger and sadness. I had always trusted April, and now I was left with this overwhelming feeling of betrayal. As I sat there, staring blankly at my computer screen, I knew this was only the beginning. I had to collect more proof. I had to know if the whispers of betrayal were just that, whispers, or a deafening reality. With a newfound determination, I decided I would find out everything I could about her secret life before confronting her. That evening, as I arrived home, the weight of the world pressed heavily on my shoulders. April was there, looking as radiant as ever, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath my calm facade. I forced a smile and made small talk, my heart racing as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation that loomed ahead. But for now, I played my part in this tragic charade, pretending that everything was fine. Deep down, I knew the truth, everything was about to change, and I was ready to uncover the reality of my wife's betrayal. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartache. I immersed myself in my work, trying to distract myself from the gnawing realization that my marriage was unraveling. Each time I looked at April, I was reminded of her betrayal, and my heart ached with a mix of anger and sadness. It was a struggle to maintain a facade of normalcy. The moment I saw her enter the house that Friday evening, I felt a rush of mixed emotions. She had come home later than usual, her laughter ringing through the hall. I glanced at the clock, 9:30 p.m. My heart raced at the thought of where she might have been. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" she chirped, her voice light, as she tossed her bag on the couch. I forced a smile, trying to mirror her enthusiasm. "It was all right, just the usual," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. We chatted for a bit, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, sleep eluded me. The recording replayed in my mind, each laugh echoing like a ghost haunting me. I could feel April's warmth next to me, but it felt foreign. I stared at the ceiling, the darkness swallowing my thoughts. I couldn't let this continue, I needed to confront her. The next day, I decided to follow her. It was a risk, but my need for answers outweighed my fear of what I might discover. I spent the morning pretending to work, my heart racing as I plotted my course. I waited until she left for her Saturday class, and then I followed her car. My heart pounded as I trailed behind her, weaving through the streets toward the university. I parked a block away and waited, watching as she strolled into the campus. My breath caught in my throat as I spotted him, a tall man with salt and pepper hair. Wearing a blazer, he looked every bit the distinguished professor I imagined. I felt my stomach churn as I watched them interact. They met outside a coffee shop, and my pulse quickened as I saw April lean in closer, her laughter filling the air. It was a scene I could have once admired, a flirtation, an undeniable chemistry, but now it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I pulled out my phone and began recording, capturing every moment. I needed proof, solid evidence that I could confront her with. As they talked, I felt like a ghost, invisible and trapped in a moment I never wanted to witness. Their laughter echoed in my ears, and I fought against the bile rising in my throat. After a while, I watched as they moved inside the coffee shop. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the way April leaned forward, hanging on his every word, sent waves of anger surging through me. I imagined all the intimate moments they shared, the secrets they whispered, and it fueled the fire inside me. I knew I had to do something. As they sat together, sipping their drinks, I made my decision. I needed to expose her, to bring this betrayal into the light. I couldn't just sit back and watch my life crumble without a fight. With trembling hands, I prepared to send the recordings to myself as a backup. I knew the moment I confronted her, she would try to deny everything. I needed the proof, the undeniable truth that would shatter the illusions of our marriage. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the campus, I made my way back to the car, my heart heavy with the knowledge I was gaining. I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The storm was coming, and I was ready to face it. After what felt like an eternity, I returned home, my heart pounding in my chest like a caged animal. I had the evidence I needed, but the thought of confronting April filled me with dread. Part of me wanted to just forget everything and pretend like I hadn't seen her betrayal unfold before my eyes. But I knew that wouldn't be possible. The weight of the truth was suffocating, and I couldn't bear the thought of living in this lie any longer. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, the air was thick with tension. April smiled at me, her eyes sparkling with the kind of warmth that had once made me fall in love with her. But now, it felt like a mask, a thin veneer over the reality I knew. I forced myself to maintain eye contact, my heart racing as I set my fork down, suddenly losing my appetite. "Dylan, are you okay? You seem a bit distracted," she said, her brow furrowing in concern. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a lot on my mind," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The lie felt heavy on my tongue. "Want to talk about it?" she asked, and I almost laughed at the irony. Here she was, the woman who had been betraying me, asking if I wanted to talk. But instead of answering, I felt a surge of determination wash over me. This was it, the moment of truth had arrived. "Actually, I think we need to talk about something important," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. April's expression shifted, the lightness fading as she registered the seriousness in my tone. "Okay, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the confrontation. "I know about you and the professor," I said, my voice steady despite the tremors in my hands. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I saw genuine fear flicker across her features. "What are you talking about?" she asked. Her voice shaky, but I could hear the panic beneath her calm facade. "I saw you today," I continued, my heart racing as I pulled out my phone and hit play on the recording. The sound of her laughter echoed through the room, and I watched her face as the realization settled in. "Dylan, wait, I can explain," she stammered, but I cut her off, the hurt and betrayal bubbling to the surface. "Explain what? The intimate conversations? The laughter? You think I'm just going to sit here and pretend it's all okay?" I shouted, my voice filled with raw emotion. April's eyes welled with tears, but I was done with the pity. "You lied to me, April. You went behind my back, and for what? A fleeting thrill? You know how hard I've worked to build a life with you, and this is how you repay me." "I never meant for it to happen," she pleaded, her voice breaking. It just happened. I didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I echoed, my anger boiling over. "You're hurting me right now. You're tearing apart everything we built together. And for what? Some cheap thrill with a man who's probably just using you." "Stop," she cried, her voice rising as she stood up, frustration etched on her face. "You don't understand. You've been so consumed with your work, so distant. I felt alone, and he was there for me." "That's your excuse? Because I was busy? You decided to cheat instead of talking to me?" I shot back, feeling the walls closing in. "I should have talked to you, I know. But I didn't think it would lead to this," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You think this is about misunderstanding? You shattered my trust. And now I have to live with the knowledge that the woman I love was betraying me all along," I replied, my voice steady despite the pain clawing at my heart. The tears streamed down her face, and I could see the guilt weighing heavily on her. But it wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the depth of her betrayal. "I can't do this anymore, April," I said, my voice firm. "You need to decide what you want. But know this, I won't be made a fool of. If you want to be with him, fine. But I will expose the truth." As the words left my lips, I felt a mixture of relief and dread wash over me. I was prepared for whatever fallout awaited me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the battle had just begun. The air was thick with tension after our explosive conversation. April was still sobbing, her tears falling silently as I processed the turmoil swirling in my mind. I felt a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and something else, an overwhelming need for clarity. I couldn't just let her walk away without knowing the full extent of her betrayal. As the night wore on, I could hear her soft cries echoing in the silence of our home. I wanted to comfort her, to reach out and pull her into my arms as I once would have. But the thought of her betrayal held me back. I was torn between the love I had for her and the anger that now fueled me. I needed to gather more evidence. I had recordings, but I wanted to be thorough. I wanted everything laid out clearly so that when I confronted her again or decided how to proceed, I wouldn't be left with any doubts. I couldn't rely solely on emotions. I needed the facts, the hard evidence to back up my feelings of betrayal. The following day, I took a day off work under the guise of feeling unwell. I couldn't focus on grading papers or engaging with students when my world was crumbling. I needed to put my plan into action. I decided to check her phone. I knew it was a violation of trust, but I was past the point of worrying about that. I needed answers. April had left her phone on the kitchen counter as she rushed to the bathroom, and my heart raced as I grabbed it. Unlocking it was easier than I expected. I scrolled through her messages, my hands trembling. My heart sank with every exchange I read, each message confirming my worst fears. The sweet nothings, the hidden conversations, all evidence of her infidelity. I quickly took screenshots of everything I could find, knowing that I might need it later. My gut churned with rage and betrayal as I continued my search. I opened her photos, hoping to find something, anything, that could help me understand how deep her betrayal ran. And then I found it. A picture of April and the professor together at a restaurant, their arms intertwined, smiles plastered across their faces. I felt my stomach drop as I realized this was proof of their relationship. I took a screenshot, knowing I'd need this image to fortify my case. I heard the bathroom door open and quickly set her phone back down on the counter, my heart racing as I turned to face her. "Feeling any better?" she asked, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Yeah, I'm just tired," I replied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. "Maybe I'll take a nap." "Okay," she said softly, her voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. She watched me for a moment, searching my face for answers, but I turned away. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply her actions had affected me. As the day dragged on, I spent the time plotting my next steps. I was torn between confronting her again with the evidence I had gathered or taking a more calculated approach. I didn't want to give her the chance to spin a narrative that would excuse her behavior. I needed to remain focused, to gather more proof if I could. That evening, I noticed April was distant, her eyes often drifting to her phone, probably waiting for messages from him. It sickened me, but I couldn't let my guard down. I decided to dig deeper into her social media. I created a fake profile, a ghost that would allow me to follow her without her knowing. It took time to build, but I was determined. I wanted to see everything, the posts, the likes, the comments, anything that could provide insight into her interactions with the professor. I knew it was wrong, but at that moment, I felt justified. I was fighting for my heart, my marriage, and I needed to know exactly what I was up against. The following days passed in a blur of anger and determination. I kept my fake profile active, watching as April posted pictures of her everyday life, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Each day brought new evidence, flirty comments, messages that hinted at more than friendship. Every time I found something new, my resolve strengthened. I was building my case, constructing the foundation of evidence that would expose the truth. I was no longer just a husband, I was a man wronged, and I was ready to fight for the justice I deserved. With every piece of evidence, I felt a fire igniting inside me, propelling me closer to my goal. I was preparing for the confrontation of a lifetime, and when the moment came, I would be ready to lay it all bare. No more secrets, no more lies. The truth would emerge, and I would reclaim my life, one way or another. Days turned into a week, and with each passing moment, the tension in our home grew unbearable. I felt like I was living in a house of cards, knowing that a single wrong move could send everything crashing down. April remained oblivious to my plan, her laughter still echoing in the hallways, but I could see the cracks forming in our relationship. Every smile, every kiss felt forced, as if we were playing roles in a tragic play. I had amassed enough evidence to make my case undeniable. The recordings, the photos, the messages. All of it was a damning portrait of her betrayal. My heart raced at the thought of confronting her again, but I knew it was time. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I needed to reclaim my life and put an end to this nightmare. That Friday night, I decided to initiate the confrontation. April had just finished her shift at the university and walked in, looking tired but cheerful. "Hey, Dylan, how was your day?" she asked, as if nothing was wrong. "Can we talk?" I replied, my voice steady, but inside I was a whirlwind of emotions. "Sure, what's up?" she said, her smile faltering slightly as she sensed the gravity in my tone. I led her to the living room, where I had set everything up. The air was heavy with unspoken words, and I could feel the tension crackling between us. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to be calm and collected. "April, I need to talk to you about something serious," I began, trying to maintain eye contact. "I've gathered some information about you and the professor." Her expression shifted instantly, panic flashing in her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I've been following your interactions for the past week. I have recordings, messages, and even pictures," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "You can't deny it anymore. You've been cheating on me." "Dylan, please," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "You're misunderstanding everything." "No, I'm not misunderstanding anything," I said, cutting her off. "I heard your voice on the recordings, April. I saw the pictures. I know what's going on between you and him. You think I'm going to sit here and let you lie to me?" April opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "Let's not do this. I have proof, and I'm going to play it for you." With that, I grabbed my phone and hit play on the recording. Her laughter filled the room, echoing like a ghost of our once happy marriage. I watched her face pale as the realization sank in. "Stop it," she shouted, covering her ears. "You're being cruel." "I'm being cruel?" I replied, my voice rising with anger. "You're the one who chose to betray me. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it." She sank into the couch, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want it to happen like this. I was lonely, Dylan. You were always busy, and he was there, giving me attention. It was just supposed to be a fling." "A fling?" I echoed, my disbelief palpable. "You think that makes it any better? You let someone else into our life, into our marriage, and now you're trying to downplay it?" "I was wrong. I know that now," she cried, desperation in her voice. "I never meant to hurt you. I love you. I still love you." "Love? How can you say you love me when you've been betraying me?" I countered, my heart heavy with pain. "Love doesn't lie, April. Love doesn't sneak around behind someone's back. I know, I messed up, but I want to fix this. I'll do anything," she pleaded, her voice breaking. I felt a pang of sadness as I saw the woman I loved break down before me, but it was too late. "You've broken my trust beyond repair. I can't just forget what you've done. The pain you've caused is too deep." As the weight of my words settled in, April's sobs filled the room. I felt a mix of anger and sadness at her despair, but I couldn't allow myself to be swayed. I had to stay strong, to stand firm in my conviction. "I can't keep living like this," I said, my voice quieting but still firm. "I need to think about what I want, and right now, that doesn't include you or your lies." I watched as her expression shifted from desperation to defeat. The fight left her eyes, replaced by an understanding that this time, I wasn't backing down. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know," I said, my heart heavy with the weight of what had transpired. "But sorry isn't enough. Not anymore." As I turned away, leaving her sobbing on the couch, I knew that this confrontation marked a turning point in my life. I was done being the victim. It was time to reclaim my power and seek the justice I deserved. The next few days passed in a blur of emotions and tension. April was a ghost of her former self, moving quietly through the house. Her eyes puffy and red from crying. I could feel the heaviness in the air, the silence that screamed louder than any argument we'd had. Each time I passed her in the hallway, I felt a surge of anger mixed with an overwhelming sadness. I had made the decision to confront her, to hold her accountable for her actions, but now that the initial shock had settled, I found myself questioning if I was strong enough to see this through. The love I had for her battled against the hurt she'd caused. I spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of what had gone wrong in our marriage. During the day, I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. I threw myself into work, burying myself in grading papers and preparing lectures. It was a distraction, a way to keep my mind occupied and my heart from spiraling further into despair. But no matter how hard I tried, April's betrayal lingered in the back of my mind like a dark cloud. It was on a Thursday afternoon when I received a message that jolted me back into reality. The university's administration office wanted to meet with me regarding a complaint about one of the professors. My heart raced as I read the message. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. I could expose April's affair and bring to light the damage he had done, not only to our marriage but to his career as well. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday, and I spent the weekend preparing my case. I gathered all the evidence, recordings, messages, photos, and created a detailed timeline of April's infidelity. The anger that fueled my determination was now a fire blazing inside me, pushing me forward with every keystroke. When Monday arrived, I dressed with purpose, donning my best shirt and blazer. I needed to present myself as someone who was serious and unwavering in my resolve. As I walked through the campus, I could feel the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders, but I was committed to following through. Upon entering the administration building, I was led into a conference room where a few members of the faculty were already seated. They looked up as I entered, and I took a deep breath before sitting down. The tension was palpable as they introduced themselves and explained the purpose of the meeting. "Thank you for coming," Dylan, the head of the department, began. "We're here to discuss some concerns that have been raised about Professor Matthews." I nodded, my heart racing. "Thank you for having me," I replied, my voice steady. "I have some information that I believe is crucial to this investigation." As I presented my case, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. I shared the recordings, detailing the timeline of April's affair with the professor, and watched as their expressions shifted from curiosity to shock. The more I spoke, the more I felt empowered, my anger morphing into a sense of justice. "This isn't just about my marriage," I emphasized. "It's about holding someone accountable for their actions. He has not only betrayed my trust but also violated the professional boundaries that should exist between a professor and a student." After I finished, there was a moment of silence in the room as they processed the information. I could see their wheels turning, the implications of what I had shared sinking in. "Dylan, thank you for bringing this to our attention," the head of the department finally said. "We take these matters very seriously, and we will conduct a thorough investigation." As I left the meeting, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I had taken action, and for the first time since I discovered April's betrayal, I felt a sense of control over my life. I wasn't just a passive victim, I was reclaiming my narrative. But the relief was short-lived. When I returned home that evening, the tension between April and me had reached a boiling point. She was sitting on the couch, her expression unreadable as I walked in. "Dylan," she began, her voice shaky. "I heard from a friend that you spoke to the administration about Professor Matthews. Is that true?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "Yes, it is. I had to. He deserves to be held accountable for what he did." April's face contorted with a mixture of anger and despair. "You're ruining his life. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I felt a surge of frustration. "You didn't mean for it to happen? You made a choice, April. You chose to betray me, and now you want me to feel sorry for him? No. I won't do that." She stood up, her voice rising. "This is about more than just you, Dylan. This affects so many people. You're being selfish." "Selfish?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think I'm the selfish one here? You're the one who decided to throw our marriage away. I'm done being the victim. I'm done with your excuses." The argument escalated, words flying between us like daggers. Each accusation cut deeper, the pain and anger surfacing as we fought. It was a battle of wills, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. As the night wore on, I realized that I had crossed a line. The reality of our situation had sunk in. This was no longer just about betrayal. It was about the very foundation of our lives shattering before us. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from the weight of our fight. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew the fallout from my actions was only beginning. I had taken a stand, but at what cost? The pain of losing April was overwhelming, and as I drifted into a restless sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives would never be the same again. The days that followed the confrontation were marked by a heavy silence in our home. April and I exchanged few words, and each glance was loaded with unspoken tension. I tried to focus on work and keep my mind occupied, but the atmosphere was suffocating. It felt like living in a pressure cooker, with the heat rising and no way to release it. My colleagues began to notice my distracted demeanor. I was no longer the attentive teacher they had come to rely on. I was a shell of my former self, lost in a sea of emotions. The stress of the situation gnawed at me, and I found myself making excuses to avoid social gatherings. I didn't want to explain my situation to anyone, but it wasn't long before the news of my meeting with the administration leaked out. Whispers began circulating on campus, and I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me whenever I walked through the hallways. The hushed conversations and glances filled me with anxiety, and I knew that my personal life had become fodder for gossip. One afternoon, I was grading papers in my office when I heard a knock on the door. It was Emily, a fellow professor and someone I considered a friend. "Hey, Dylan, do you have a minute?" she asked, her expression serious. "Of course," I replied, motioning for her to sit down. She took a deep breath, her brow furrowed. "I just wanted to check in on you. I heard about the situation with April and Professor Matthews." "Yeah, it's complicated," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "I know this must be difficult for you," she said softly. "But I've heard some rumors circulating. Some people are saying that you're trying to ruin his career." I felt a surge of anger. "That's ridiculous. I didn't do this for any personal gain. I did it because what he did was wrong." "I know that, but you know how people can be," she replied. "They don't see the whole picture. They just hear bits and pieces and jump to conclusions." As she spoke, I could feel the weight of the rumors settling in. It was infuriating to think that my actions were being twisted into something malicious. I was just trying to stand up for myself, to seek justice for the betrayal I had endured. "I'm not trying to ruin anyone's life," I said, my voice rising. "I'm trying to hold someone accountable for their actions. This isn't just about me, it's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." "I understand, and I admire you for taking a stand," Emily said, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "Just be careful. The last thing you want is to become the villain in this story." After our conversation, I returned to my grading, but the words lingered in my mind. The last thing I wanted was to be seen as the bad guy. I was just a man trying to reclaim my life after being blindsided by betrayal. That evening, I returned home, feeling heavy-hearted. April was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her phone. I knew we needed to talk, but the words were stuck in my throat. The tension was so thick it felt like I could cut it with a knife. "April," I finally said, breaking the silence. "We need to discuss what's happening on campus. The rumors, they're getting out of hand." She looked up, her expression unreadable. "What rumors?" "People are saying that I'm trying to ruin your professor's career," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "That I'm the bad guy in all of this." April sighed, her eyes welling with tears. "I didn't want this to happen, Dylan. I never wanted any of this to blow up like it has." "I know," I replied, feeling a mix of sympathy and anger. "But it has, and we need to figure out how to handle it. I'm not trying to destroy anyone's life, but I can't just sit back and do nothing." "I feel trapped," she confessed, her voice shaky. "I made a mistake, and now it feels like everything is falling apart. I never wanted you to be hurt like this." I paused, seeing the pain etched on her face. Part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her, but the other part felt betrayed. "You put us in this situation, April. You had to understand that." "I know," she cried, her voice breaking. "But I'm scared. Scared of what this means for both of us. I didn't think it would go this far." As we sat in the kitchen, the weight of our situation settled around us like a thick fog. We were both scared of the unknown, scared of how this would affect our futures. But I knew one thing: I couldn't let fear dictate my actions any longer. "Look, I'm not trying to be cruel," I said, softening my tone. "But we need to be honest with each other. This is a mess, and we can't keep pretending everything is fine." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "You're right. I need to take responsibility for what I did. I never wanted to hurt you. Then we need to figure out how to move forward from this," I said, my heart aching at the thought of our broken relationship. But I can't do it alone. We both need to be honest about what we want. As the night wore on, we talked about our fears, our hopes, and the path forward. It wasn't easy, but for the first time since everything unraveled, it felt like we were both finally facing the truth together. But even as we opened up, I couldn't shake the feeling that the rumors would only escalate. The campus buzz was relentless, and I knew that whatever happened next would shape the course of our lives in ways we couldn't yet comprehend. I had stepped into a battle, and I was ready to fight. But the question remained, at what cost? After our heart-to-heart conversation, I felt a strange mix of hope and dread. April and I had finally started to communicate openly, but I knew that the situation with Professor Matthews was far from over. The whispers around campus continued to spread like wildfire. And the more I tried to stand up for myself, the more I felt the backlash intensifying. The next week, I arrived at work to find a tense atmosphere in the faculty lounge. My colleagues exchanged glances as I entered, their conversations hushed. I could feel their eyes on me, judging and dissecting my every move. It was suffocating. "Hey, Dylan," called out Mark, a fellow professor who had always been friendly. He waved me over, his expression neutral. "Can we chat for a minute?" "Sure," I replied, forcing a smile as I approached him. We moved to a quieter corner, away from prying ears. "Look, I just wanted to check in on you," he said, glancing around. "I've heard some things, about the situation with April and Matthews." I nodded, bracing myself for what was to come. "Yeah, it's been tough," I admitted. "People are saying you're being vindictive," he said carefully. "They think you're trying to ruin Matthew's life. That you're out for blood." My anger flared at the thought. "That's not true. I'm just trying to hold him accountable for what he did. He crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed." I know, Mark replied, holding up his hands. "But you know how these things go. It's easier for people to see the drama than the truth. Just be careful. It might come back to bite you." "Thanks for the heads up," I said, my heart heavy. But I'm not backing down. I refuse to be the villain in this story. As I returned to my office, the weight of Mark's words hung over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on shaky ground, fighting an uphill battle. The more I fought for my dignity, the more I seemed to be losing myself in the process. Later that week, I received an email from the university administration. They wanted to schedule a follow-up meeting regarding the ongoing investigation. My heart raced as I read the message. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for, but it was also a moment filled with uncertainty. When the day of the meeting arrived, I felt a mixture of determination and apprehension. I walked into the administration building, feeling the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders. I knew that whatever happened in that room could change everything. As I entered the conference room, I was met by the same panel of administrators from my previous meeting. Their expressions were serious, and I could sense the gravity of the situation as I took my seat. "Thank you for coming, Dylan," the head of the department began. "We appreciate your willingness to provide additional information about the allegations against Professor Matthews." "Of course," I replied, my voice steady. "I want to make sure that everything is handled fairly. We've conducted interviews and reviewed the evidence you provided," the head said, her gaze fixed on me. "We take these matters seriously, but we also have to consider the implications for all parties involved, including you and April." The mention of April sent a pang of discomfort through me. I wasn't sure where her loyalties lay anymore, and I couldn't help but wonder how much she had shared with the administration. "Dylan, we want to ensure that you're not being subjected to any undue backlash as a result of this investigation," the head continued. "We've heard concerns from other faculty members regarding your approach." My heart sank. "What do you mean by concerns?" "There are some who feel that your actions may be perceived as retaliatory," she said carefully. "We need to be cautious about how this is handled. The university does not condone retaliation in any form, and we want to protect all parties involved." I felt a surge of frustration. "I'm not retaliating. I'm standing up for myself. I can't just sit back and let this happen." "I understand your feelings, but it's important to remember that public perception matters," she said gently. "We want to resolve this situation without escalating it further. It's crucial that you maintain a professional demeanor throughout this process." As I sat there, my heart raced with anger and disbelief. It felt like I was being painted as the villain in a narrative that I didn't create. I was just trying to protect myself from betrayal, and yet, it felt as though the system was turning against me. Fine, I replied, my voice strained. I'll play by your rules, but I won't stop fighting for what's right. The meeting concluded with a list of recommendations for both April and me. They wanted us to undergo counseling to address the situation and to ensure that our interactions on campus remained professional. I felt a mix of anger and resignation as I left the building. It was clear that the university was more concerned about its reputation than about the damage caused by an affair. When I returned home that evening, I found April waiting for me. She was sitting on the couch, her expression anxious. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "They want us to go to counseling," I replied, my voice low. "They think it will help us navigate this situation." April's eyes widened. "Counseling? Do you think that will help?" I shrugged, feeling a mix of frustration and uncertainty. "I don't know. I think they just want to make sure we don't make things worse." "I can't believe this is happening," she said, burying her face in her hands. "I never wanted it to go this far." "I know," I replied, my heart heavy. "But we're in this now, and we have to figure it out together." As we sat in silence, I could feel the weight of the rumors and backlash pressing down on us. It was like a dark cloud looming over our heads, threatening to consume us both. But amidst the chaos, I knew I had to stand firm. I couldn't let the whispers define who I was or what I would fight for. With a heavy heart, I resolved to face whatever came next head on. I would not be a victim, I would be a survivor. But the path ahead was uncertain, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. Counseling was scheduled for the following week, and I felt a mix of apprehension and resignation as the day approached. Part of me was hopeful that it might offer some clarity, but another part of me dreaded the idea of sitting in a room with April, dissecting the mess our lives had become. The night before our first session, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. April and I had been trying to navigate the fallout of her affair, but the truth was, I still didn't fully understand what had led her to make such a devastating choice. When the morning arrived, I got dressed with purpose, trying to push away the anxiety that clung to me. April was quiet as we drove to the counselor's office, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. I could feel the tension radiating between us, a palpable reminder of the unspoken words that still lingered. As we entered the counseling room, the atmosphere felt heavy with expectation. The counselor, Dr. Hayes, greeted us with a warm smile, inviting us to take a seat on the plush couch across from her. I could feel April's tension as she settled beside me, and I knew this would be an uncomfortable experience. "Thank you both for being here today," Dr. Hayes said, her voice soothing. "I know this is a difficult time for both of you, and I appreciate your willingness to engage in this process. Let's start by talking about why you're here." I glanced at April, unsure of how to begin. She took a deep breath and spoke first. "I guess we're here because I made a mistake. I had an affair, and it has caused so much pain for both of us." Dr. Hayes nodded, encouraging her to continue. "That's a brave first step, April. Can you tell us how you've been feeling about everything?" April's voice trembled as she spoke. "I feel awful. I never meant to hurt Dylan. It was a terrible decision, and now I'm scared of losing him forever." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. "You say you're scared, but you also made a choice that hurt me deeply," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "It's hard for me to reconcile those feelings right now." Dr. Hayes interjected, "It's important to recognize that both of you are experiencing pain in different ways. Dylan, can you share how you've been feeling?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "I feel betrayed, angry, and confused. I thought we had a strong marriage, and then everything fell apart. It's hard for me to trust you right now, April." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "And I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I just want to understand what led me to make that choice." Dr. Hayes nodded again, guiding the conversation. "That's an important question. Understanding the why can be key to healing. April, what do you think contributed to your decision to cheat?" As April struggled to find the words, I felt a mix of anger and sympathy. I had been waiting for this moment, hoping she would offer some insight into her actions. "I think I was feeling lost," she finally admitted. "I got caught up in the excitement of someone new and lost sight of what I had at home." "But that doesn't excuse your actions," I said, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "You could have come to me and talked about how you were feeling. Instead, you chose to betray me." I know," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was selfish, and I didn't think about the consequences. I just got caught up in my own emotions. Quote. Dr. Hayes intervened gently. This is a painful realization for both of you. It's essential to understand that hurt people often hurt others. But it's also crucial to communicate your needs and feelings openly. As the session continued, we delved deeper into our feelings and the cracks that had formed in our relationship. I struggled to keep my emotions in check, the pain of betrayal still raw. By the end of the session, I felt emotionally exhausted. We had only scratched the surface. And I knew that this journey wouldn't be easy. April and I left the office, and the weight of the conversation lingered in the air. I think we made some progress, she said hesitantly, glancing at me. Did we? I replied, my voice low. It still feels like we're stuck in the same place. I know it's going to take time, she said softly. But I'm willing to fight for us, Dylan. I really am. As we drove home, the silence enveloped us, heavy and thick. I wanted to believe that we could make it through this. But doubts gnawed at me. That evening, as I sat on the couch, I reflected on the session. I could see glimpses of hope in April's eyes, but the betrayal was a wound that would take time to heal. I couldn't ignore the fact that trust had been shattered, and rebuilding it would require patience and effort from both of us. But the shadows of doubt still lingered. The rumors on campus continued to swirl, and I knew that we were living under a microscope. I was determined to fight for my marriage. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead would be filled with obstacles and challenges. As I settled into bed that night, I realized that facing the truth would require more than just willingness, it would require courage. I had to confront my own feelings, my anger, and my heartbreak. And in doing so, I hoped to find a way back to the love we once shared, even if it felt like an impossible journey. As the weeks passed, our counseling sessions with Dr. Hayes became a routine part of our lives. Each session was a mixture of discomfort and revelation, peeling back layers of emotions and exposing the raw wounds of our relationship. In our next session, Dr. Hayes encouraged us to discuss our feelings more openly. Today, I want to focus on communication, she said, her calm demeanor putting me slightly at ease. It's vital that you both express your needs and feelings honestly. April shifted in her seat, her expression serious. I think I need to hear why you're still angry, Dylan. I want to understand what I did to hurt you so deeply. I took a deep breath, knowing this conversation wouldn't be easy. It's not just about the affair itself, I began. It's about the trust that was shattered. You went outside our marriage without even considering the impact it would have on me. It felt like you chose him over us. Tears welled in April's eyes. I never meant to hurt you, I swear. I was lost and confused. But I see how my actions destroyed your trust. Do you understand how that feels? I pressed, my voice strained. It's like someone took a knife and stabbed it right into the core of my being. I can't just turn those feelings off. I get it, she replied, her voice breaking. I never wanted to cause you that pain. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. Dr. Hayes interjected gently. Dylan, it's okay to feel angry. Anger is a normal reaction to betrayal. But expressing it is key to moving forward. April, how do you feel hearing this from Dylan? I feel awful, she admitted. Her hands trembling. I hate that I caused him this pain. I want to be better for him, for us. Then let's focus on how you can rebuild that trust, Dr. Hayes suggested. What steps can you take to show Dylan that you're committed to repairing this relationship? I can start being more transparent about my feelings, April said. I can reach out to him when I feel lost instead of hiding it. That's a good start, Dr. Hayes encouraged. And Dylan, how can you support April in this process? I thought for a moment, the weight of the question heavy. I guess I need to try to listen more, I admitted. I've been so consumed by my anger that I haven't made space for her to share her feelings. Excellent, Dr. Hayes said, smiling gently. It's a two-way street. Both of you need to be willing to listen and to be heard. As we continued to discuss our feelings, I began to notice small shifts in April's demeanor. She was making an effort to communicate, to open up in ways she hadn't before. I felt a glimmer of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by my lingering doubts. After the session, we walked to the car in silence. The cold air nipped at our skin, and I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that hung between us. I'm trying, Dylan, April said, breaking the silence as she started the engine. I really want to make this work. I love you. I know, I replied, my voice softening. But love alone won't fix what happened. We need to keep working on this. As we drove home, I reflected on our conversation. I wanted to believe we were making progress, but the shadows of doubt still loomed large. Each step forward felt fraught with potential setbacks, and I knew the path to rebuilding trust wouldn't be linear. Over the next few weeks, our sessions continued. We dug deeper into the root causes of our issues: communication, vulnerability, and the need for connection. With every session, I felt a mix of frustration and hope. In one session, Dr. Hayes prompted us to discuss our dreams and aspirations. "What do you envision for your future together?" she asked. "I want us to feel like a team again," I said, my heart heavy. "I want to be able to share my life with you without feeling this fear of betrayal lurking behind every corner." April nodded, tears in her eyes. "I want that too. I want to rebuild what we lost and find a way to reconnect on a deeper level." Dr. Hayes smiled, encouraging us. "That's a great start. Building a strong foundation requires a commitment to each other and to the process. It's going to take time, but you both seem willing to invest in this." As we left the office that day, I felt a small spark of hope igniting within me. Perhaps we could find our way back to each other, but the journey ahead was still fraught with uncertainty. That evening, we decided to spend some quality time together. I made dinner, and we sat at the table, sharing small talk. It felt oddly normal, a stark contrast to the heaviness that had defined our relationship for weeks. "Do you remember our camping trips?" April asked, a hint of a smile breaking through the tension. "We used to have so much fun just being together in nature." "I do," I replied, warmth flooding my chest. "Those were some of the best memories." "Maybe we should plan a trip soon," she suggested. "Get away from all of this chaos and just reconnect." I hesitated for a moment, the idea tempting but also daunting. "I think that could be nice," I said cautiously. "But I need to feel like we're in a better place first." "I understand," she replied softly. "I just want us to find our way back to that happiness." As we finished dinner, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't fully formed yet, but it was there, lurking just beneath the surface. We were still facing immense challenges, but perhaps, just perhaps, we could navigate this turbulent time together. That night, as I lay in bed, I made a silent promise to myself: I would fight for us, for our love, and for the future we once dreamed of. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But I was ready to take those steps, one day at a time. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself oscillating between hope and despair. Each counseling session brought us closer together, yet the shadows of doubt still haunted me. It was a Thursday evening, and I was getting ready to meet April for dinner. We had been trying to make an effort to reconnect outside of counseling, but every time I prepared for one of our date nights, a nagging voice in my head reminded me of her betrayal. I put on a nice shirt and tried to shake off the doubts swirling in my mind. "Tonight is about us," I whispered to myself. I wanted to believe that we were on a path to healing, but every time I looked at her, I felt a flicker of uncertainty. When April arrived at the restaurant, she looked radiant, her hair cascading down her shoulders and her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I'm so glad we're doing this," she said, her smile brightening the dimly lit space. "Me too," I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm. As we sat down, I noticed the small gestures she made, reaching for my hand, laughing at my jokes, and leaning closer as we talked. For a moment, it felt like old times. But then, in the middle of sharing a story, I caught a glimpse of a couple at a nearby table, and a wave of anxiety crashed over me. I couldn't help but remember the conversations April had with her lover, how she had shared intimate moments that should have been ours. It was a gut punch that brought me back to reality. I couldn't let my guard down, not yet. "What's wrong?" April asked, her expression shifting from joy to concern. "Nothing," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just lost in thought." "You're doing it again," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. "I can see it on your face. You're not really here, are you?" I sighed, the weight of my emotions spilling over. "I'm trying, but sometimes it's hard to forget what happened. It's like a shadow that follows me everywhere." "I don't want you to feel that way," she said earnestly. "I want you to trust me again. I want to rebuild that." "Trust is hard to regain, April," I replied, my voice tinged with frustration. "You broke it, and it's not just going to magically fix itself. Every time we're together, I'm reminded of what you did." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of guilt. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back. I just want to show you that I'm committed to us." I paused, looking at her. I see you trying, but there are days when I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Waiting for the next slip-up or betrayal. It's exhausting. I understand, she said, wiping away a tear. But I need you to meet me halfway. Let's create new memories, ones that can help overshadow the past. I considered her words, but doubt still crept into my mind. What if we can't? What if this is just an illusion, and we're fooling ourselves into thinking we can fix this? Then we'll face it together, she replied, her voice steady. I'm not giving up on us. I can't promise it will be easy. But I believe we can find our way back. Her determination struck a chord within me. Perhaps we could build something new, but the scars of betrayal were still fresh. After dinner, we decided to take a walk along the river. The cool night air was refreshing, and for a brief moment, I felt a sense of peace. But then, as we walked in silence, a thought crossed my mind. What if I ran into her lover? The idea sent a chill down my spine, and my anxiety resurfaced. Dylan? April said, interrupting my thoughts. You're doing it again. What's going on in that head of yours? I hesitated, unsure if I should voice my fears. I was just thinking about him, I admitted, my voice low. What if I run into him? How would I handle that? April's expression shifted to one of concern. You won't. He's not a part of our lives anymore. We're moving forward, remember? I know, but it still feels like a possibility. I can't shake the feeling that he's still lurking somewhere in the background, I said. Frustration bubbling over. April stopped walking and turned to face me. Dylan, I can't change the past, and I can't control who you might run into. But I'm here with you now, and I want to build a future together. You have to let go of that fear. I'm trying, I replied, the weight of my emotions threatening to overwhelm me. It's just hard. I want to trust you, but my mind keeps going back to that moment of betrayal. I promise I'll do everything I can to earn your trust back, she said. Her voice unwavering. I love you, and I want us to be happy again. As we continued our walk, I felt the tension between us shift slightly. April was right, I had to try to let go of the past and focus on the present. But with every step, I felt the remnants of doubt creeping back in. When we returned home that night, I climbed into bed, my mind racing. I wanted to believe that we could overcome this, but the scars of betrayal still felt fresh. Trust was a fragile thing, and I wasn't sure how long it would take to rebuild it. Lying there, I made a silent promise to myself. I would give it my all, but I also needed to protect my heart. It was a delicate balance, and I wasn't sure how to navigate it. But for now, I would take it one day at a time, hoping that the path we were on would lead us back to each other. The following week, April and I went into our next counseling session with a renewed determination. I felt more hopeful than I had in a while, but there was still a lingering unease in my chest. As we settled into the familiar space of Dr. Hayes' office, I tried to shake off the doubts that still clung to me. Welcome back, both of you, Dr. Hayes said with her usual warmth. I'm glad to see you both again. How have things been since our last session? April spoke up first. We've been trying to communicate more openly, and I think we're making progress, she said, glancing at me with a hopeful smile. I nodded, trying to reflect her optimism. Yeah, we've had some good conversations. But I still struggle with my trust issues. I admitted, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over me. That's completely understandable, Dr. Hayes replied, her tone reassuring. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it's essential to acknowledge those feelings. What specifically has been difficult for you, Dylan? I hesitated, searching for the right words. It's just, every time I think we're moving forward, something reminds me of the betrayal, and it pulls me back. I keep worrying about whether this will ever really change. Dr. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. It's a process, and it's normal to have setbacks. But you both need to keep working at it. April, what steps have you taken to help Dylan feel more secure? I've been trying to be more transparent with my feelings and my schedule, she said, her voice steady. I want him to know that he can trust me again. That's a good strategy, Dr. Hayes encouraged. Building trust is about consistency and openness. Dylan, how does that make you feel? It helps, but it's still hard to shake the memories. I admitted. I guess I just need to see that she's committed to us. After our session, I felt a little lighter. But that evening, while I was working late at the university, something happened that threatened to undo the progress we'd made. I was heading out of the library when I spotted him, Jack, April's lover. He was sitting at a table, engrossed in a book. My heart raced, and I froze for a moment, a surge of emotions flooding through me. I had expected to run into him one day, but now that it was happening, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. I debated whether to confront him, to say something, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I turned to leave, but just as I did, he looked up and locked eyes with me. "Dylan," he said, his voice steady but a hint of surprise in his expression. "Jack," I replied, my tone flat. I tried to walk past him, but he stood up, blocking my path. "Can we talk?" he asked, a mixture of concern and apprehension in his voice. I hesitated, the anger boiling beneath the surface. "What's there to talk about?" I shot back, my voice tense. "You've already done enough damage." "I know, and I regret it," he said, raising his hands defensively. "I never intended to hurt you, but I can't change the past. I just want to clear the air." I couldn't believe the audacity of this man. "Clear the air? You think that's possible after what you did?" My voice was rising, drawing the attention of nearby students. "Let's step outside," he suggested, trying to keep the situation calm. Reluctantly, I followed him out, my heart pounding. Once outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I struggled to contain my anger. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my fists clenched at my sides. "I just want you to know that I didn't take anything from you that wasn't already broken," he said, his tone surprisingly calm. "April was unhappy long before I came into the picture." The words hit me like a slap in the face. "That doesn't excuse your actions," I replied, trying to rein in my emotions. "You could have walked away. Instead, you chose to pursue her." "I know, and I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far," he said, his voice earnest. "But she was vulnerable, and I was there. I thought, maybe I could help her." "Help her?" I laughed bitterly. "You were just using her to satisfy your own needs. Don't pretend this was anything noble." "I'm not trying to make excuses," he said, his expression shifting to one of frustration. "I'm here because I want you to know that I regret my actions." I didn't realize the consequences until it was too late. I took a step back, trying to process his words. "Why are you telling me this now? What do you expect me to do?" "I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I can see that April is trying to make things right. I want you to know that I never wanted to ruin your marriage." "You've done more than ruin it," I shot back. "You've shattered everything we built together. Trust, love, everything." He looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I understand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm out of the picture now. I won't come between you again." "Good, because if you do, I won't hesitate to make my feelings clear," I warned, my voice low and steady. "Stay away from my wife." "I will," he replied, his tone sincere. "I promise. I'm just trying to move on, too." With that, I turned to leave, anger and frustration boiling within me. I could feel the weight of the encounter pressing down on my shoulders. I hadn't expected to confront him, and now I was left reeling from the encounter. As I drove home, my thoughts raced. I wanted to believe April when she said she was committed to us, but the truth was, I didn't know how to shake the feeling of betrayal. The encounter with Jack had reopened wounds I was trying so hard to heal. When I arrived home, I found April waiting for me in the living room. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice light. I hesitated, debating whether to share what had just happened. But the anger bubbled to the surface, and I couldn't hold back. "I ran into Jack," I said, my voice tense. Her expression immediately changed, a mix of surprise and concern. "You did?" "Yes, and he had the nerve to tell me he regrets what happened," I spat, frustration spilling over. "As if that changes anything." April's eyes widened, and I could see the concern etched on her face. "What did you say?" "I told him to stay away from you," I replied, pacing the room. "He thinks he can just walk away and pretend like nothing happened. It doesn't work like that." "I'm sorry you had to see him," she said softly, stepping closer. "I didn't want you to have to deal with that. He has no right to interfere in our lives." "Yeah, well, he already did. And it's hard for me to forget that," I said, my voice rising again. "Every time I see you, I can't help but think about him. I'm trying to rebuild that trust, Dylan. I want to move forward," she pleaded, her eyes searching mine. "Do you even understand how hard that is for me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Every day feels like I'm battling against the past." "I know," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "But I need you to try. I need you to trust me again." As I looked at her, I realized how deeply we were both affected by this situation. We were both fighting against our demons, trying to salvage what was left of our marriage. "I want to try," I said finally, my voice softer. But it's going to take time, and I need you to understand that. I will wait for you, she promised. Her voice filled with sincerity. I'll do whatever it takes to prove my love for you. As we stood there, the weight of our situation felt heavy yet manageable. The road ahead would be difficult, but I realized that perhaps, together, we could find a way to navigate it. We both had our battles to fight, but maybe, just maybe, we could emerge stronger on the other side. The following days felt like a delicate dance. April and I were both trying to navigate our emotions, yet there was a sense of determination in the air. We were committed to making this work, even if the scars of betrayal were still fresh. One Friday evening, I returned home to find April in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, a comforting reminder of simpler times. She turned as I walked in, her smile brightening the room. "Hey, I thought I'd surprise you," she said, stirring a pot on the stove. "I made your favorite pasta." I couldn't help but smile back. "Thanks, that's really thoughtful." As we sat down to eat, I felt a sense of normalcy return, even if it was just for a moment. We shared stories about our week, laughing and enjoying each other's company. It felt good to reconnect. Later that evening, as we cleaned up together, I glanced at her. "You know, I've been thinking. Maybe we should plan a weekend getaway. Just the two of us." April's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing. Where do you want to go? Maybe the cabin by the lake?" I suggested, feeling a surge of excitement. "We could spend some time outdoors. Away from all this." "I love that idea," she replied, her smile widening. "It'll be a chance for us to relax and focus on each other." After dinner, we spent the rest of the evening planning our trip. I felt a glimmer of hope, a chance for a fresh start. We booked the cabin for the following weekend, and I could already imagine the peaceful surroundings and the time we'd have to reconnect. As the days passed, I felt a growing anticipation. This getaway could be what we needed to truly begin healing. But in the back of my mind, the fear lingered. Would it be enough to erase the past? The weekend arrived, and as we drove to the cabin, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. We arrived, and the sight of the lake surrounded by tall pines took my breath away. "This place is beautiful," April said, stepping out of the car and breathing in the fresh air. "It really is," I replied, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. We unpacked our bags and settled in, and that evening, we lit a fire outside. Watching the flames dance in the darkness. The stars shone brightly overhead, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of peace. "Thank you for this," April said softly, her gaze fixed on the fire. "I think we needed this time together." "Me too," I said, feeling the warmth of her presence. "I want us to move forward, to make new memories." As we sat there, I felt the tension begin to ease. Maybe this getaway would be the fresh start we both needed. But as I glanced at the fire, I couldn't shake the feeling that the past was still lurking just out of sight. I knew we had a long way to go, but perhaps this was the first step toward healing. For now, I wanted to focus on the moment and embrace the new beginning that lay ahead. The first morning at the cabin felt refreshing. I woke up to the soft sound of birds chirping and sunlight filtering through the trees. As I got out of bed, I felt a sense of hopefulness in the air, a promise of a fresh start. I headed to the kitchen to prepare coffee. Enjoying the smell of fresh brew wafting through the cabin, April joined me a few minutes later, her hair tousled and her eyes still half closed. "Good morning," she said, a sleepy smile spreading across her face. "Good morning. I made coffee," I replied, pouring her a cup. We sat on the porch, sipping our drinks as we took in the serene view of the lake. The stillness of the water mirrored the tranquility I was desperately hoping to find within our relationship. After breakfast, we decided to take a hike along one of the trails. The fresh air felt invigorating, and as we walked side by side, I could feel the tension from our past beginning to melt away. We talked about everything and nothing, laughing and enjoying each other's company. But as we reached a viewpoint overlooking the lake, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a message from a number I didn't recognize. My heart sank. "Who is it?" April asked, noticing my change in expression. "It's just a random number," I said, trying to keep my tone light. But as I read the message, my stomach twisted. It was a photo of April with Jack, laughing together, taken during their affair. "Dylan, what's wrong?" she asked, stepping closer. I held up the phone, my hands shaking. "It's a message from someone with a photo of you and Jack." April's face fell, and I could see the shock and guilt wash over her. I don't know how that got there, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't know how? I echoed, feeling the anger rise within me. What am I supposed to think? This is exactly what I was afraid of. No, please listen to me. I didn't ask for this. She pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. I've cut all ties with him. I'm trying to rebuild what we had. But why now? Why would someone send me this? I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. I don't know, she said, her voice breaking. Maybe it's someone trying to hurt us, to sabotage what we're trying to build. You have to believe me. As I stared at her, the weight of the betrayal felt heavier than ever. I wanted to trust her, but the image of her with Jack was burned into my mind. Dylan, please. I love you, she said, her voice cracking. I'm here with you now, and I want to move forward. I've made mistakes, but I'm committed to us. The tears streaming down her face tugged at my heart, and part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her. But another part felt betrayed all over again. Let's just take a moment, I said, my voice softer now. I need some air. I stepped away, trying to process everything. The photo felt like a dagger, piercing the fragile trust we were trying to rebuild. I walked toward the edge of the lake, watching the water ripple with the gentle breeze, trying to find clarity amid the chaos. A few minutes later, I heard her footsteps behind me. I'm so sorry, Dylan. I never wanted this to happen. I want to be with you, and I don't want my past to come between us. I know you say that, but it feels like the past is always lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. I replied, still feeling conflicted. We can't let it win, she said firmly, her voice steady. Let's not let someone else's actions define our future. I'm here with you, and I want to work through this together. I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. You're right, I said reluctantly. But it's going to take time. I need to know I can trust you. I'll do whatever it takes to earn that trust back, she promised, her voice filled with determination. With a deep breath, I nodded. Maybe this was just another bump in the road, a test of our resolve. But as I watched her, I knew I had to be willing to try, no matter how hard it felt. Let's focus on today, I said finally. We still have time together, and I don't want to waste it worrying about the past. As we walked back to the cabin, I felt a flicker of hope amid the uncertainty. It would be a long road ahead, but maybe we could navigate it together, one step at a time. The days that followed were a mix of tension and tentative hope. April and I tried to focus on our time together, but the shadow of the past loomed over us like a dark cloud. The photo and the message lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of what we were trying to overcome. We spent the next day exploring the area around the cabin, hiking trails and enjoying the beauty of nature. April was trying her best to reconnect with me, but I could sense her worry. Every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the betrayal, and it felt like a barrier between us. That evening, after a long day, we settled in for a quiet dinner. As we ate, the silence hung heavily in the air. I finally broke it, feeling the need to address the elephant in the room. April, I said, looking her in the eye. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. The message you saw, it really shook me. I understand, she replied, her voice earnest. But please know that I'm committed to us. I want to build something new, something better. I want that too, I said, but the doubt lingered. But every time I think we're making progress, something reminds me of the past. I know, she said softly, tears glistening in her eyes. But we have to choose to move forward. We can't let the past dictate our future. Her words resonated with me, and I realized that she was right. I needed to decide whether I was willing to fight for our marriage or let the past consume me. Then let's make a choice together, I suggested. Let's set some boundaries. I need to know you're serious about this. No more contact with Jack, no more secrets. Absolutely, she agreed, her voice firm. I don't want him in our lives, and I want you to feel secure in our relationship. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. And I'll do my best to work through my trust issues. I want to be present for us. Thank you, Dylan, she said, relief washing over her face. I promise I'll do everything I can to earn your trust back. After dinner, we decided to take a walk by the lake. The moonlight shimmered on the water, casting a soft glow around us. As we strolled in silence, I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm starting to settle in. Look at that, I said, pointing to the reflection of the moon on the lake. It's beautiful. It really is, April replied, stepping closer to me. Just like us, we can shine again. As we reached a quiet spot by the shore, I turned to her, feeling a surge of emotions. I want to believe in us again. I want to trust you. I want that too, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. We're in this together, no matter what. In that moment, I realized that while the past would always be a part of our story, it didn't have to define our future. We could choose to write a new chapter, one filled with hope and healing. As we stood there, I felt a renewed sense of commitment. We had both made mistakes, but we were willing to fight for each other. Maybe this getaway was just what we needed to start fresh, to rediscover the love that had been overshadowed by betrayal. Let's take it one day at a time, I said finally, my voice steady. We'll figure it out together. Together, she echoed, a smile breaking through her tears. We stood by the lake, hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever came next. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. We had chosen each other, and that was a start. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee brewing and the sound of April humming softly in the kitchen. It felt like a scene out of a movie. A perfect morning that should have felt peaceful. But in the back of my mind, the whispers of doubt lingered. I joined her in the kitchen, and she smiled as I poured myself a cup of coffee. Good morning. I thought we could have a little breakfast picnic by the lake, she suggested, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. That sounds great, I replied, forcing a smile despite the unease creeping in. I wanted to be excited, but the shadows of our past still clouded my thoughts. We packed a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and a couple of drinks before heading to the lakeshore. The morning sun sparkled on the water, and I took a moment to appreciate the beauty around us. Maybe today would be different. As we settled on a blanket, April began talking about her plans for the future. I was thinking we could start a new tradition of having weekend getaways like this more often. Just to reconnect and recharge. Yeah, that sounds nice, I said, trying to match her enthusiasm. But deep down, I wondered if those weekends could truly erase the pain. After a few bites of our sandwiches, she turned serious. Dylan, I want to talk about everything that happened. I know we've said we're moving forward, but I think we need to address it fully to really heal. I agree, I said, looking at her earnestly. But it's hard for me. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if I should jump or step back. April reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. I want you to know that I'm committed to being here, to facing this together. You're not alone in this. I know, but it's hard not to think about Jack, I confessed. I can't shake the images in my mind of you with him, laughing, sharing moments that were supposed to be ours. Her expression softened, and she looked down at our intertwined hands. I can't change the past, Dylan. All I can do is promise you that I'm here now and that I love you. As she spoke, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. I wanted to believe her, to trust that we could move forward, but the past felt like a weight dragging me down. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I know you love me, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. But I can't help feeling insecure. What if you slip back? What if someone else tries to come between us? I won't let that happen, she vowed, her eyes fierce with determination. I'll do everything in my power to show you that I'm all in. You have my heart, Dylan. I'm not going anywhere. I wanted to believe her, but the fear of betrayal lingered like a specter in the back of my mind. What if it happens again? I don't know if I can handle it. April took a deep breath, her expression softening. Then let's make it our mission to build a stronger relationship. Let's be open and honest about everything, no secrets. We can't control the future, but we can control how we react to it. I nodded, realizing that she was right. We had to commit to being transparent with each other, to confronting our fears rather than letting them fester in the dark. Okay, I said, feeling a sense of resolve. Let's do that. Let's be honest and communicate. As we finished our picnic, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could work through this. Maybe we could find a way to trust each other again. But just as I began to feel a sense of peace, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, and my heart sank. It was another message from the same unknown number. April noticed my change in demeanor and leaned in. What is it? I opened the message, and my stomach twisted. It was another photo, this time of April and Jack in a seemingly intimate setting. Laughing together over coffee. Dylan? April's voice was filled with concern. I looked up, my heart racing. It's another photo. Why is this happening? I thought we were moving forward. April's face paled, and I could see the fear in her eyes. I don't know, Dylan. I swear to you, I haven't been in contact with him. Then who is sending these? I asked, my voice rising with frustration. This is exactly what I was afraid of. I'll find out, she said quickly. I'll get to the bottom of this. I don't want anything to come between us, I promise. I wanted to believe her, but the shadows of doubt crept back in. As we sat in silence, the weight of uncertainty hung heavily in the air, threatening to pull us back into the darkness we were trying to escape. We had taken a step forward, but it felt like we were teetering on the edge once more, uncertain of what lay ahead. The echoes of the past were growing louder, and I knew we had to confront them together if we had any hope of moving forward. The morning felt heavier than usual as we packed up our picnic. The new photo haunted me, casting a dark shadow over the lightness we had felt just hours before. April was quiet as we made our way back to the cabin, her thoughts clearly racing. Once inside, I paced the living room while April sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together. I could see the worry etched on her face, the conflict brewing beneath the surface. "Dylan," she finally spoke, her voice shaky. "I know this looks bad. But I promise you, I'm not in contact with Jack. This is just a sick joke or someone trying to mess with us." "Then why is this happening?" I snapped, the frustration bubbling over. "I thought we were doing better. I thought we could move past this. I want to move past this," she exclaimed, standing up. "But I can't do it alone. I need you to trust me." "Trust? How can I trust you when I'm getting messages that say otherwise?" I shot back, anger coursing through my veins. "Because I'm standing right here, fighting for us," she yelled, her eyes pleading. "I'm not the same person I was before. I'm committed to us, Dylan." I ran my hands through my hair, feeling the tension rise. "Then let's find out who's sending these messages. This has to stop." "Agreed," she said, her voice softer now. "We need to take action. Let's start by looking at who might have access to my phone or could have seen us together. Maybe someone at the university? Let's check your social media too," I suggested. "Maybe someone's trying to stir up drama." We sat down at the table, determined to uncover the truth. April pulled out her phone and began scrolling through her contacts and messages. I watched as her fingers moved frantically, searching for anything out of the ordinary. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. "I haven't spoken to Jack since, well, you know when." I nodded, remembering how hard she'd fought to break free from that chapter of her life. I wanted to support her, to help her prove her commitment to our marriage. But the nagging doubt wouldn't let go. After several tense minutes of scrolling and searching, April sighed, leaning back in her chair. "There's nothing here. No missed messages, no calls. Just, nothing." "Let's check your social media," I said again, trying to keep my composure. April opened her social media apps, scrolling through her notifications. "Maybe someone has been tagging me or sending messages." As she continued scrolling, I noticed her expression shift. "What is it?" I asked, leaning closer. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a comment on a recent post. "Someone commented here, saying they hope I enjoy my time with Jack." My heart raced. "Who is it?" "Just someone from the university. I don't even know them," she replied, her voice trembling. I felt a mix of anger and betrayal wash over me. They must have seen something. "We need to confront this person." "Yeah, but how?" she asked, biting her lip. "I don't want to stir up more drama." "We need to gather evidence," I insisted. "If they're trying to sabotage us, we need to show them that we're stronger together." April nodded, her determination returning. "You're right. Let's reach out to them. Find out what they know." We spent the next hour crafting a message to the person who had commented. It felt surreal, but we both knew we had to take this seriously. As we finally hit send, I glanced at April, my heart racing. "No matter what happens, we're in this together." "Together," she echoed, her eyes meeting mine with a fierce intensity. After sending the message, we decided to take a break and go for a walk around the cabin. The fresh air was welcome, but my mind kept racing with possibilities. What if this was just the beginning? What if the person behind this was someone we couldn't escape? April and I walked in silence, each lost in our thoughts. Eventually, she broke the silence. "Dylan, I want to thank you for standing by me. I know this isn't easy for either of us." I glanced at her, my heart softening. "I'm trying, April. I really am. I just need to know that this is real." "It is real," she assured me, her voice steady. "I promise I'm all in." As we returned to the cabin, I felt a flicker of hope. We had faced one of our toughest challenges together, and maybe, just maybe, we could emerge stronger. But I knew that as long as those messages kept coming, the path to healing would remain rocky. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. My heart sank as I looked down at the screen. It was another message from the same unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. This time, the message read, "You think it's all over? She'll never be yours again." The weight of the words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. Who was this person? What did they want? I turned to April, determination coursing through my veins. We need to find out who's behind this. I won't let them tear us apart. Agreed, she replied, her voice filled with resolve. We're going to confront this, no matter what it takes. As we stood there, united in our resolve, I realized that together we could face anything. No matter how deep the scars ran, we would fight for our love, for our future, and for the trust we were still trying to rebuild. The battle was far from over, but we were ready to fight back.